My husband brought his sick first love into our home, despite my protests, expecting me, his wife, to take care of her every need. At 65 years old, my life was turned completely upside down. She wasn't grateful. She wasn't kind. She dumped entire bags of salt into my meals, poured dish soap into my drinking water, and even resorted to physical violence. And my husband, he simply shrugged it off. "She's sick," he told me. "Don't hold it against her." I endured. And my own son. He had more free time than I did after work, yet somehow I was the one expected to pick up my granddaughter, cook all 3 meals, handle the household chores. And when I couldn't keep up, he yelled at me, "Mom, you're home all day. Why can't you do more?" I still endured, but they never considered that my patience had its limits. The man who had never once bought me flowers now sat tenderly combing the hair of his first love, buying her dresses, singing songs with her, while I spent years cooking, only for my efforts to be dismissed in favor of a few leftovers she stuffed into his arms. That was the moment I finally woke up. I put down my spatula, I packed my bags, and I walked away, with grace. They thought I couldn't live without them, but little did they know, it was them who couldn't live without me. While I traveled, made videos with young people, and tried new things, he stayed behind, overwhelmed, tormented by the very first love he had once protected. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore. Sick in bed, consumed by regret, he called out, "Vivien, come back." But life doesn't offer second chances. By then, I was already on my way, living for myself, for the first time in my life. My name is Vivien, and this is my story. It's a story of betrayal, of loss, but ultimately, it's a story of reclaiming a life. Because it's never too late to find your own road, to chase your own horizon, and to finally, truly, live for yourself. And believe me, the view from here is spectacular. The aroma of apple pie, Lily's favorite, usually filled me with a quiet joy. But not today. Today, my 60th-something birthday felt less like a celebration and more like a carefully set trap. Jorge, my son, had been relentless. "Mom, just one dinner. For Lily, for me, Dad. Dad wants to make amends." Make amends. The words had echoed hollowly in my kitchen, now situated in Jorge's guest room after I'd first walked out on Paul. I wiped my hands on my apron, eyeing the seafood risotto, Jorge's special request, simmering on the stove. My own favorite. No one had asked. The doorbell rang, a sharp, intrusive sound. Lily, bless her innocent heart, scampered past me, her pigtails flying. "Grandma, they're here!" And there they were. Paul, looking sheepish, a store-bought cake tilting precariously in his hands, and behind him, a shadow clinging to his arm, was Noah, his first love, the woman whose Alzheimer's had become the gilded cage for my own remaining years with him. "Vivien," Paul began, his voice attempting a warmth that curdled in the air. "Happy birthday, dear." "Just put it on the counter, Paul," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. Lily was already bouncing, eyeing the cake. For her sake, I pasted on a smile. One dinner. I could survive one dinner. Paul, misinterpreting my resignation for forgiveness, brightened. "Wonderful. I'll just pop out for some wine. Can't have a birthday without a little cheer, eh?" He winked, a gesture so out of place it was almost comical, then disappeared out the door. Lily, meanwhile, had found the candles. "Grandma, do you have a lighter?" "In my bedside table, sweetie. Let me get it." I turned towards my room, a small sigh escaping me. As I fumbled for the lighter, a strangled gasp, then a wail pierced the air. "Lily." I rushed back. The scene that greeted me stole my breath. Noah, her eyes wide and vacant, was systematically dismantling the feast I'd spent all afternoon preparing. Handfuls of risotto were being crammed into the pockets of her dress. The apple pie was a mangled ruin, chunks of it joining the risotto. She was humming a tuneless, childlike song. Lily stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, a little sound of terror caught in her throat. "Noah, no!" I stepped forward, my voice sharp. Noah's head snapped up, her gaze, unfocused but strangely intense, fixed on Lily. Then, with a sudden, jerky movement, she lunged, one hand outstretched, clearly intending to shove my granddaughter. Instinct took over. I didn't think, I reacted. I thrust myself between them, pushing Noah back, not hard, just enough to break her momentum, to shield Lily. The front door swung open. Paul. He took in the scene in one devastating glance. Me with my hands on Noah, Noah stumbling back, Lily sobbing. The wine bottles he carried crashed to the floor, red liquid bleeding across the tiles like a fresh wound. "Vivien, what in God's name are you doing to her?" His face, moments before attempting bonhomie, was now a mask of pure fury. He rushed to Noah's side, cradling her as if she were made of spun glass. "Are you insane? Have you completely lost your mind?" Noah, an actress even in her clouded state, began to tremble, her eyes welling with tears. She turned her back to me, her small hands opening to reveal the pilfered food to Paul. For you, Paul," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread. They were eating. Without you, I saved it." Paul stared at the mess in her hands, then at the devastation on the table. His eyes, when they met mine, were twin flames of accusation, and then, with a roar, he grabbed the edge of the dining table, the one laden with my birthday dinner, and flipped it. Dishes, food, everything, crashed to the floor in a sickening symphony of shattering porcelain and splattered hopes. He advanced on me, his hand raised. You jealous, vindictive shrew," he spat, his voice shaking with rage. "She saved me food, and this is how you treat her." "If you're angry, Paul, take it out on me," I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to keep it steady. "But don't you dare twist this. She was going to hurt Lily." His hand hovered, then dropped, but the disgust in his eyes was a blow in itself. "I can't believe you. I never, ever thought you were capable of such malice." He grabbed Noah's arm. "We're leaving. You can explain this to Jorge." And just like that, they were gone, slamming the door behind them, leaving me in the ruins of my birthday, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. 30 years. This was what it came down to. A handful of stolen food, hoarded by a sick woman, meant more to him than 3 decades of my life, my care, my love. It hadn't always been Noah. For 30 years, it had been Paul and I. A life built on routine, quiet companionship, and what I'd believed was a foundation of mutual respect, if not passionate romance. Paul was a programmer, logical, reserved. He never bought me flowers, rarely uttered words of endearment, but he provided, he was stable. I'd convinced myself that was enough. Then Noah, his childhood sweetheart, re-entered his life, widowed and recently diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's. "She has no one, Vivien," Paul had said, his eyes holding a plea I hadn't seen in years. "We have to help her. It's the right thing to do." "Help her, Paul? Or move her in?" I'd asked, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. "Just for a little while, until we can figure something out." That little while stretched into an eternity. Our home, my sanctuary, became Noah's playground, and I, her unwilling, unpaid caretaker. It started subtly. An entire salt shaker emptied into the soup I'd carefully seasoned. "She's confused, Vivien. Don't make a fuss." Dish soap bubbles discovered in my water glass, thankfully before I'd taken a sip. "An accident, dear. She probably thought it was juice." Her favorite cashmere sweater, a gift from Jorge, found shredded in the linen closet. "She gets agitated. We need to be patient." Patient. I was drowning in patience. The arguments became a daily ritual. "Paul, she hit me today, deliberately, when I was trying to help her dress." His response, always the same, delivered with a sigh of exasperation. "Vivien, she's sick. She doesn't know what she's doing. Can't you have a little compassion?" Compassion. I was the one living with the constant low-level warfare, the sly pinches, the misplaced items, the chilling moments when a flicker of cunning would gleam in Noah's otherwise vacant eyes. He saw a fragile, confused woman. I saw a saboteur, dismantling my life piece by piece, with him as her willing accomplice. The breaking point, the first one, had been the stew. I remember the day so clearly. I'd spent hours simmering a beef stew, the rich aroma a small comfort in the suffocating atmosphere of our home. Noah had been agitated all morning. I'd left the kitchen for a moment, and when I returned, she was standing over the pot, a beatific smile on her face, an empty salt container in her hand. "Noah, what did you do?" I'd cried, rushing to taste it. It was inedible, a briny disaster. Just then, Paul walked in, back from one of his long walks he often took with Noah, leaving me to manage the household. He carried a small, wilting wildflower. Not for me, of course. He presented it to Noah with a gentle smile. "For my lovely girl." Noah, forgetting her culinary crime, clapped her hands. He then, without a glance at my crestfallen face, dipped a spoon into the stew, his face contorted. "God, Vivien, this is disgusting. It's pure salt. Can't you do one simple thing right?" Before I could utter a word, before I could explain, he seized the heavy pot. The rage in his eyes was terrifying. He marched to the back door and, with a furious heave, hurled the entire contents into the yard. "I'm taking Noah out to eat. Maybe you can figure out how to cook a decent meal by yourself for a change." The door slammed, leaving me staring at the splattered stew, a mirror of my ruined efforts, my wasted care. That was when the first crack appeared in the dam of my endurance. The stew incident was the straw, or rather, the mountain of salt that broke me. That night, I packed a small bag. Paul found me by the door. "Where do you think you're going?" he demanded, not with concern, but with indignation. "Away from this. Away from her," I'd said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I can't do this anymore, Paul. I'm not her nurse. I'm your wife, or at least I used to be." He'd scoffed. "Don't be dramatic, Vivien. You're overreacting." But I wasn't. I left. I went to Jorge's. Lucy, his wife, was kind, if a little overwhelmed herself with work and Lily. Jorge, however, became Paul's mouthpiece. "Mom, you have to go back," he'd plead night after night. "Dad's falling apart. Noah's, well, she's a handful. He needs you." "And what about what I need, Jorge?" I'd ask, but my words seemed to bounce off his filial loyalty. Then came my birthday. His idea. "A chance for Dad to apologize, Mom. He bought you a cake." That's how I ended up back in the line of fire, culminating in the disastrous scene, the overturned table, Paul's venomous accusations. After Paul and Noah stormed out, leaving the wreckage, Jorge finally turned to me. Lucy was trying to comfort a hysterical Lily, murmuring soothing words, shooting worried glances between her husband and me. "Mom," Jorge began, and I braced myself. "You really need to try harder with Noah. She's sick. You know that. Dad's just trying to be a good man." I stared at him, incredulous. "A good man, Jorge? He just accused me of trying to harm her after she destroyed my dinner and lunged at your daughter. He flipped a table in your house." Jorge ran a hand through his hair, his face a mask of frustration. "Look, Noah wouldn't hurt Lily, not really. You're both overreacting. And Dad, he's under a lot of stress. You should be more understanding. At your age, Mom, acting so jealous. It's embarrassing. You had a perfectly good home, and you're the one messing it up." A laugh, sharp and bitter, escaped me. "A perfectly good home? Jorge, do you have any idea what that perfectly good home was built on? On my silence, my compliance, my endless, thankless labor. I thought of the sleepless nights, the aching back, the constant anxiety. The peace you all enjoyed was bought with my sanity." Lucy shot Jorge a warning look, tugging his arm. "Jorge, maybe now's not the time." But he shook her off, his voice rising. "Oh, stop exaggerating, Mom. It's cooking and cleaning. Millions of women do it. Since when is that some kind of grand sacrifice? Dad told me how you provoked Noah. He says you've always disliked her." The injustice of it, the sheer blindness, choked me. My own son. "Get out, Jorge," I whispered, the words like ice. He blinked. "What?" I pointed to the door of my guest room. "Get out of my sight." This wasn't his house. This was the room I was staying in, but the implication was clear. His face darkened. If anyone's leaving, Mom, it's you, he snarled, his earlier pleading forgotten. This is my house, and frankly, I'm tired of this drama. You and Dad need to sort yourselves out, or you can find somewhere else to stay. Lucy gasped, Jorge. The instant regret on his face was visible, but the words were out. They hung in the air, heavy and final. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't a refuge. This was just another place where I wasn't seen, wasn't valued. I didn't argue. I simply turned, walked into the guest room, and began to pack the few belongings I'd brought with me. There wasn't much. An old black coat Jorge had given me when he was a boy, bought with his paper route money. Dads have daughters as their little princesses, Mum, he'd said, beaming. But I'm your son, so I'll be your little sweetheart. The memory brought a fresh wave of pain. I left the coat on the bed. Some things were too heavy to carry. When I emerged, suitcase in hand, Jorge was standing there, his face pale. Mum, wait, I didn't mean it. I'm sorry, I was angry. Where are you going? I don't know yet, Jorge, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. But it won't be here, and it won't be back there. He tried again. Let me drive you home. Just talk to Dad. You're married. For better or worse, remember, you need to be more patient with him. Understand him. I shook my head, a bitter smile touching my lips. Patience, Jorge, has a limit. An understanding is a two-way street, a street I've been walking alone for far too long. I pulled my suitcase behind me and walked out of his house, out of that life and into the terrifying, exhilarating unknown. The first few nights in a sterile hotel room were a blur of exhaustion and an unfamiliar, unsettling quiet. Then, I found a small furnished rental on the outskirts of town. The first call I made was to a divorce lawyer, a young woman named Sarah, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. It's not uncommon, Vivien, she said gently, as I recounted a condensed version of my story. More and more women your age are realizing they deserve better, that life's too short to be unhappy. Paul was served the papers at our old house. He called me immediately, his voice a cocktail of disbelief and outrage. Divorce? Vivien, are you serious? After all these years, over a misunderstanding? It's not a misunderstanding, Paul, I replied, my voice calm. I'd rehearsed this. It's a fundamental incompatibility of values. You value Noah's comfort above mine, above our marriage. I want a life where I am valued. But I do value you. I need you. Noah needs you. Noah has you, Paul. And you seem quite content with that arrangement. I'm just formalizing it. We met with our lawyers. Paul's, a portly man with a condescending air, tried his best to dissuade me. Mrs. Henderson, surely after so many decades, there's no problem that can't be resolved with a little communication. Think of the disruption, the expense. Paul sat beside him, looking forlorn, like a chastised schoolboy. He kept darting glances at me, his eyes pleading. Vivien, please, let's just talk. I looked from Paul to his lawyer, then back to Sarah, who gave me a subtle nod of encouragement. Gentlemen, I began, my voice clear and steady. The difficulties in a marriage aren't dependent on whose feet they land under. Some may find certain burdens easy to bear, but that's usually because they're not the ones carrying the weight. Whether a life is bearable or not is something only the person living it can truly know. And I have lived it. For 30 years. I'm done. A silence fell over the room. Paul's lawyer cleared his throat, shuffling his papers. Paul just stared at his hands. The divorce was, by legal standards, straightforward. We had assets. The house, some savings. I asked for half. Fair was fair. Paul, to my surprise, agreed readily, even suggesting I keep the house. You deserve it, Vivien, he said when we were briefly alone, as Sarah printed final documents. For everything. I've been a fool. His words, which might have melted me years ago, now felt like too little, far, far too late. I'll be selling it, Paul, I told him. I need a fresh start, somewhere new. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt lighter, as if a physical weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunshine, took a deep breath of the clean air, and smiled. It was the first genuine smile I'd felt in years. Jorge called a few days later, his voice strained. "Mum, you actually went through with it? At your age? What will people say? Have you thought about Lily? About me?" "Jorge," I said, my patience wearing thin. "I've thought about myself, for the first time in a very long time. And yes, I've thought about Lily. Do you want her to grow up believing a woman's life is solely about catering to everyone else's needs, only to be discarded when she's no longer convenient? Do you want her to marry a man who values his past infatuation over his present wife? A man who expects her to care for his ailing first love without a word of complaint?" He was silent for a long moment, then a choked sound. "Mom, I don't understand." "No, Jorge," I said sadly. "I don't suppose you do, but maybe someday you will." Selling the house was easier than I expected. I found a charming little cottage in a coastal town a few hours away, close enough to see Lily, far enough to feel like a world apart. With the proceeds from the sale and my share of our savings, I was comfortable. More than comfortable, I was free. I started an Instagram account, something the bright young woman at the local coffee shop suggested. "Share your journey, Vivien. People love comeback stories." So I did. Pictures of my garden, my disastrous first attempts at baking sourdough, the stunning sunsets over the ocean. To my surprise, people started following, commenting, cheering me on. Paul, meanwhile, hadn't given up. Bouquets of flowers began arriving, roses, lilies, my old favorites, each accompanied by a card with a scribbled, "Thinking of you," or "I miss you." Then came the photos, texted to my phone. Burnt toast, soupy scrambled eggs, a plate of pasta that looked like a science experiment gone wrong. His attempts at domesticity were, frankly, pathetic and manipulative. "See how helpless I am without you?" I didn't respond. I was too busy. I joined a local walking group, took a pottery class, even started learning French online. I was rediscovering Vivien, the woman I'd buried beneath layers of wifely duty and maternal sacrifice. One afternoon, as I was leaving the grocery store, I almost collided with him. Paul. He looked awful. His clothes were rumpled, his hair unkempt, dark circles etched beneath his eyes. He looked 10 years older than when I'd last seen him. "Vivien." He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. I need to talk to you." I gently extricated my arm. "Paul, we're divorced. There's nothing left to say." "Please," he begged, his voice raspy. "Just 5 minutes. If I agree to put Noah in a proper nursing home, a really good one, would you consider giving us another chance?" I stared at him, a humorless laugh bubbling up. "Another chance, Paul? After everything? You're only offering this now because you can't cope, not because you suddenly value me." I shook my head. "No, absolutely not. I'm finally free. Why would I ever go back to being your unpaid caregiver and emotional punching bag?" His face fell. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was David, my real estate agent from the sale of the old house, now a casual friend. He'd promised to show me some investment properties in my new town. He pulled up to the curb, a cheerful, silver-haired man a few years younger than me. "Vivien, ready to conquer the property market?" he called out, grinning. As I moved to get into his car, Paul surged forward, his eyes blazing with a sudden, irrational jealousy. He blocked the car door. "Who is he?" he demanded, his voice tight with suspicion. "What's going on here, Vivien?" David looked taken aback. I rolled my eyes. "Paul, this is David, my real estate agent, and it's none of your business." Paul's jaw clenched. "He just got divorced from you, and now this vulture is circling? He can't be a good man, Vivien. Moving in so fast." The hypocrisy was astounding. I leaned out the window, a smirk playing on my lips. "Oh, really, Paul? And tell me, what kind of good man keeps his ailing first love under the same roof as his wife for months, gaslighting her and dismissing her pain, before she's finally forced to divorce him to save her own sanity?" His face went white. David, sensing the tension, smoothly reversed the car, maneuvered around a sputtering Paul, and drove off. As we pulled away, David chuckled. Ex-husband drama, huh? Never gets old. No, I said, a genuine smile finally reaching my eyes. It really doesn't. Now, about those properties. Life, it turned out, was full of new beginnings, even at 60-something. Life settled into a pleasant rhythm. My Instagram followers grew, and I even started a small YouTube channel, sharing my gardening tips and coastal walks. Lily was a regular visitor. Jorge would drop her off, our exchanges brief and polite, the chasm of his earlier betrayal still present, though I tried, for Lily's sake, to be civil. It was through Lily, in her innocent, unfiltered way, that I learned of the ongoing saga at Jorge's house. Paul had, indeed, moved in with Noah. The chaos I had escaped was now theirs to endure. Grandma, Lily said one afternoon as we painted seashells, Grandpa Paul is very sad. And Noah, Grandma, she's different. Different how, sweetie? She threw Mummy's new shoes in the toilet, and she poured juice all over Daddy's computer. Daddy yelled really loud, and Grandpa Paul just cried. She paused, dabbing blue paint onto a clamshell. One time they were fighting so much they forgot to lock the door, and Noah Grandma ran away. The police brought her back. Grandpa Paul was so scared, he got sick. My heart twisted. Not for Paul, not really, but for the sheer, unrelenting misery of it all. He ties a rope to his wrist now, Grandma, Lily continued, her voice matter-of-fact, and the other end to Noah Grandma's, so she can't run away when he sleeps. But she doesn't like it. She screams and hits him. She doesn't know him anymore, I think. She keeps calling for her own mommy. The image was horrifying. Paul, tethered to the ghost of his past, a past that no longer even recognized him. The irony was a bitter pill. During one of Lily's visits, she looked up at me, her brow furrowed with a child's profound confusion. Grandma, Grandpa Paul was really sick in bed last week. He kept calling your name. He said, Vivien, Vivien, I'm so sorry. Daddy says he really means it. Will you ever forgive him? I stroked her hair, my heart aching for her innocence caught in this adult mess. Sweetheart, I said gently, what's the point of correcting an answer after the test has already been graded and put away? When Jorge came to pick her up that Sunday, he lingered at the door after Lily had bounced into the car. He looked haggard, older than his years. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom, he began, his voice thick. He swallowed hard. Then, to my utter shock, he crumpled. Tears streamed down his face, great gulping sobs he couldn't control. He reached out blindly, and his arms wrapped around me in a desperate hug, like he was a little boy again, seeking comfort from a nightmare. Mama, he choked out, the word muffled against my shoulder. Mama, I'm so sorry. I was so wrong. I miss you. I stood stiffly in his embrace, my own emotions a turbulent sea. Part of me wanted to push him away, to remind him of his cruelty. Another part, the mother part I thought had withered, felt a pang of something akin to pity. He was trapped, just as I had been. He didn't say anything more. He just clung to me for a long moment, then released me, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, mumbled a goodbye, and practically fled to his car. As I watched them drive away, I closed my eyes. The first word a child often speaks is mama. And in moments of deep distress, or even at the end of life, it's often mama they call for. Perhaps children always love their mothers, deep down, but so many of them, like Jorge, only truly realize the depth of that bond when it's been fractured, or when it's almost too late. Months passed. I continued to build my new life. My YouTube channel was thriving in a modest way, and I'd even started collaborating with other older influencers, sharing travel tips and life hacks. I was planning a trip to Italy. Then the call came. It was Jorge, his voice strained, almost fearful. Mom, it's Dad. He's in the hospital. It's bad. He's asking for you. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Not grief, not yet. More like an inevitability. What happened? They don't know for sure. Stress, exhaustion. His heart. The doctor said, well, he said we should prepare ourselves. He keeps asking for you, Mum. Won't you come? Just once. I hesitated. Did I owe him that? Did I want to see him like that? But then I thought of Lily, of Jorge's desperate plea. All right, Jorge, I'll come. The hospital air was thick with antiseptic and unspoken fears. Jorge met me at the entrance to the cardiac ward, his face etched with worry. He led me to Paul's room. Paul lay on the bed, looking impossibly frail, a pale imitation of the robust man I'd known. Wires snaked from his arm. A monitor beeped a steady, somber rhythm. His eyes were closed. Jorge touched his arm gently. Dad? Dad, Mum's here. Vivien's here. Paul's eyelids fluttered open. His gaze, hazy at first, struggled to focus. Then it found me. A flicker of something. Surprise? Relief? Crossed his features. He tried to lift a hand, a weak, trembling gesture. Vivien, he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. You came? I pulled up a chair, my face carefully neutral. How are you feeling, Paul? A stupid question, given the circumstances. He managed a faint, ironic smile. Like I'm at death's door, Vivien. Which I suppose I am. He coughed, a dry, rattling sound. You know, all those months, caring for Noah, it was hell. His eyes searched mine. I never knew. I never saw how hard it was for you. I was so blind, so selfish. I listened, my expression unchanging. His words, confessions now wrung from him by fear and illness, felt like echoes from a distant, painful dream. I'm sorry, Vivien, he choked out, tears welling in his eyes. For everything. For the neglect, for the cruelty, for choosing a ghost over you. He paused, struggling for breath. Noah, I finally did it. A few weeks ago, I put her in a nursing home, the best one I could find. A short, sharp laugh escaped me before I could stop it. It wasn't a laugh of mirth, but of bitter realization. So, you finally couldn't handle it yourself, Paul. When it became too much for you, then you sent her away. You see, even now, you haven't really changed. You abandoned me when I needed your support with her, and now you've abandoned her when she needed you most. The only person you've ever truly, consistently loved, Paul, is yourself. His face crumpled. The monitor beside him seemed to beep a little faster. I stood up. There was nothing more to say, nothing more to hear. Take care of yourself, Paul, I said, my voice devoid of any lingering warmth. Then I turned and walked out of the room, out of the hospital, and back into my own life, leaving him to face the consequences of his choices, alone. Paul didn't die. Not then. He recovered slowly, but he was never the same. Lily, on her next visit, told me the rest. Grandpa Paul brought Noah Grandma home from the nursing place, Grandma, she said, her small face serious. He said he couldn't leave her there alone, but she doesn't know him at all anymore. She just sits and stares, or sometimes she cries for her own mommy, who's been gone for years and years. The image was bleak. Paul, shackled to a woman who was a stranger, a living embodiment of his life's greatest misjudgment. The love he'd chased, the ideal he'd worshipped, had evaporated, leaving only a hollow shell and a profound, crushing loneliness. Grandpa doesn't talk much, Lily continued. He just sits by the window. Daddy tries to get him to go out to see people, but he won't. He coughs a lot. Daddy says he should go back to the doctor, but Grandpa refuses. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a question she couldn't quite voice. Grandma, why is Grandpa Paul so sad all the time? He told Daddy he wishes he'd never been born. I drew her close, stroking her hair. Sweetheart, sometimes people want everything so badly. The past, the present, things they can't have, that they end up with nothing. And that kind of emptiness, it's a very painful thing to live with. A few months later, Jorge called. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. Mom, Dad passed away this morning, peacefully, in his sleep. A pause. Noah. She went about a week before him. It was quick. Silence stretched between us. I felt A stillness. Not sorrow, not relief, just an ending. He asked for you, Mom, Jorge said quietly. Right at the end, he whispered your name. Thank you for telling me, Jorge, I said. I didn't go to the funeral. My grieving for Paul, for the marriage we'd had, and the one we hadn't, had happened years ago, when I'd walked out with my suitcase and my shattered heart. A week later, I found myself standing before his grave. A simple stone. Paul Henderson, beloved husband and father. Beloved. The word seemed to mock me. There were fresh flowers, probably from Jorge and Lily. I hadn't brought any. Well, Paul, I murmured to the unhearing stone, you got your wish. You're with Noah now, I suppose. Or maybe you're just gone. I sat on a nearby bench, the autumn wind rustling the leaves. I wasn't angry anymore. The bitterness had faded, replaced by a profound, almost weary sense of clarity. He had made his choices. He had reaped what he sowed. Karma, as they say, had a way of balancing the books. I don't hate you, Paul, I found myself saying, surprised by the truth of it. I did, for a long time, but not anymore. Now, I just feel free. And I was. Free of him, free of the past, free to finally, completely be myself. I stood up, brushed off my coat, and walked away without looking back. The final thread connecting us had finally, irrevocably, unraveled. At 70, I discovered a passion for hiking in the Dolomites. At 71, I had a whirlwind romance with a charming Italian artist, 10 years my junior, while exploring Tuscany. It was sweet, fleeting, and left me with beautiful memories, and a few rather abstract paintings. At 72, I rode in a helicopter over the Grand Canyon, the sheer exhilaration making me feel decades younger. Though the pilot steadfastly refused my, only half-joking requests to take the controls. Paul's passing, and Noah's before him, had closed a long, often painful chapter of my life, but it also, in a strange way, liberated the last vestiges of what-ifs and regrets. Jorge and I found a new, quieter understanding. He'd call, we'd chat, mostly about Lily, who was blossoming into a remarkable young woman. He never again tried to guilt me or impose his expectations. He'd learned his lesson, albeit the hard way. Under Lily's pillow one day, after a visit, I found a bank card and a note in Jorge's handwriting. Mum, the password is your birthday. For everything. I smiled, touched by the gesture, and put the card away in a safe place, unused. My freedom wasn't for sale, not even by a repentant son. One crisp morning, I stood admiring my latest acquisition, a gleaming, slightly used camper van. I'd spent weeks researching, then customizing it. A comfortable bed, a compact kitchenette, a small bookshelf overflowing with travelogues and novels I'd always meant to read. Fairy lights twinkled above the small dinette. It was my home on wheels, my ticket to anywhere. I packed a single suitcase, not with the grim finality of an escape, but with the joyful anticipation of an adventurer. My first destination was vaguely west, chasing the sunset. No fixed itinerary, no deadlines, just the open road and the promise of discovery. I posted a picture of my new chariot on Instagram. The caption read, "Life doesn't start at 20 or 30 or even 60. It starts the moment you decide you're ready for it. My new adventure begins now." That evening, I brewed a cup of tea on my tiny stove, wrapped myself in a cozy blanket, and sat in my fold-out chair, watching the stars ignite in an ink-black sky somewhere in rural Arizona. A gentle breeze whispered through the pines. I didn't know where I'd be next week, next month, or next year. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the unknown wasn't a source of fear, but of profound, exhilarating excitement.